Right now, somewhere, a woman is scrolling through a pregnancy app alone at 2 a.m., terrified with nobody to call. Think about this. For nearly all of human history, that moment never existed. A pregnant woman was never alone. Not during the pregnancy, not during the birth, not for a single night afterward. Someone was always within arm's reach, ready to answer the exact question she was too afraid to ask out loud. Here's something that should feel strange the moment you hear it. Human childbirth is uniquely difficult among primates. A chimpanzee can give birth alone, clean the infant herself, and walk away within the hour. A human, by comparison, almost never could. That's not a small difference. Maternal mortality during childbirth has historically been one of the leading causes of death for women, in a way that simply doesn't happen the same way for our closest primate relatives. Evolution built something uniquely risky into human birth, and then built an entire social system to compensate for it. Hold on to that thought, because the reason isn't a design flaw. It's the whole reason you're wired to need other people the way you do. If that idea just gave you chills, do one thing right now. Tap subscribe, because this channel exists for people who want the real science behind the instincts they were never told they had. Now stay with me, because human birth is stranger than most people realize. When our ancestors evolved to walk upright, the shape of the pelvis changed to make that possible. At the same time, human babies evolved bigger brains and bigger heads. Those two changes collided, and the result is what anthropologists call a rotational birth. The baby has to turn as it moves through the birth canal, often facing away from the mother. Scientists have a name for this evolutionary tug of war. They call it the obstetrical dilemma. A pelvis wide enough for easy birth would make walking upright much harder, so the human body settled on a narrower compromise instead. Human babies are born earlier and more helpless than other primates, partly because of this trade-off. At the latest point, their heads can still fit through. This is not an exaggeration. Wenda Trevathan, a biological anthropologist, proposed what's become known as the midwifery hypothesis. Because of this rotational birth, a mother giving birth alone would struggle to even guide her own baby out safely, let alone clear its airway or catch it without help. If the baby emerges facing the wrong way, a mother reaching down alone could actually bend the newborn's spine backward. A second set of hands solves a problem the mother's own body physically cannot. Rosenberg, an anthropologist at the University of Delaware, has argued that assisted birth may date back as far as 5 million years, to when our ancestors first started walking on two legs. Humans need helpers in childbirth, she says, because it is difficult and potentially dangerous. This is not some rare cultural custom found in a handful of societies. Across nearly every culture that has ever been studied, from small hunter-gatherer bands to modern hospitals, women are assisted during birth. The pattern is close to universal, not because women are fragile, because the exact same evolutionary trade-off that gave you a big enough brain to read this sentence made solitary birth almost impossible. But the help didn't stop the moment the baby arrived. Human infants are born remarkably helpless, unable to hold their own heads up, completely dependent for years, not months. A mother alone, carrying and feeding one infant while also gathering enough food to survive, faces an energy problem that simply doesn't add up. Sarah Hrdy, an evolutionary anthropologist, has spent decades studying how humans actually solve this. Her answer is called cooperative breeding. Unlike other great apes, where the mother is the only real caregiver, humans evolved to share the burden across the whole group. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, even unrelated members of the tribe. Anthropologists call them alloparents, literally other parents. The African proverb about it taking a village to raise a child isn't a nice sentiment. According to this research, it's closer to a literal description of how our species survived at all. Studies of hunter-gatherer societies still living this way today show just how many hands are actually involved. In some groups, researchers have documented over a dozen different individuals providing regular care to a single infant in its first year of life, not occasionally, but as a routine, expected part of daily life. This is not an exaggeration. Without that shared care, researchers argue human mothers couldn't have supported the energy demands of raising children with such long periods of dependency. The village wasn't a nice to have, it was load-bearing. There's a related idea researchers call the grandmother hypothesis. Human women are unusual among mammals in living decades past their reproductive years, and some researchers argue this happens specifically because older women who helped raise grandchildren allowed their daughters to have more children sooner and survive doing it. In other words, your body may have evolved menopause itself, partly as a side effect of how essential a grandmother's help once was. Remember what I asked you to hold on to earlier? Let's finally talk about it. Your brain was built for a world where pregnancy and early parenthood happened inside a crowd. Someone was always nearby who had done this before, who could take the baby for an hour, who noticed if you'd gone quiet for too long. There was no version of new parenthood in our evolutionary past that happened behind a closed apartment door, with one exhausted adult and no one checking in. This is not an exaggeration. Modern life has quietly removed almost all of that. Small nuclear families, distant relatives, new parents left alone in an apartment with a baby and a phone. Many new mothers today report going days without another adult physically holding their baby, something that would have been almost unthinkable for most of human history. Researchers studying postpartum mental health consistently point to a lack of social support as one of the strongest predictors of struggle after birth, not weakness, not failure. A missing village. If you've ever felt like new parenthood was harder than anyone warned you, or that you were supposed to handle it all yourself, that feeling isn't a personal shortcoming. It's your ancient wiring correctly detecting that something essential is missing. Even the anxiety itself makes sense through this lens. A pregnant woman today who feels an instinctive pull to have people around her, to not be left alone with a newborn, to want someone experienced nearby, isn't being anxious for no reason. She's responding to exactly the same signal her body has been sending for hundreds of thousands of years. You were never designed to do this alone. No one in the entire history of our species was. Not the mother giving birth, not the exhausted parent at 2 a.m. Needing help was never the exception to how humans raise children. It was always the plan. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are just ancient. Comment below. Did you have a village when you needed one, or did you have to build your own? Like this video if it changed how you think about needing help, and subscribe for more of the ancient reasons behind your modern life.